Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Adult Improver edition of Perpetual Chess. And we have quite a guest for you this week. It is someone who has made absolutely mind-boggling gains and very philosophical and insightful about how he achieved that. This is FM Nick Matta that I speak of. We'll get you to the interview in just a few minutes, but I have a few exciting announcements first. Number one, friend of the pod, Elizabeth Spiegel, who famously is the teacher at IS 318 in Brooklyn, an incredibly successful scholastic program that was featured in the movie Brooklyn Castle. They're looking to hire a second chess teacher. You actually need to be a DOE certified teacher here in the US in order to apply, but it's a great opportunity. I'll read you what Elizabeth wrote in the Chess Teachers Forum Facebook group about it. She wrote, IS 318 is hiring a second full-time DOE chess teacher in September. If you are or know someone who is DOE certified or will be, that's Department of Education, minimum 1800 rating and a good teacher, let me know. This is the real deal, high salary, full health and dental, summers off, your own classroom, and a wonderfully supportive community. We have a huge program, 94 active tournament players, 30 over 1200, 15 over 1400, 7 over 1600, tournaments every weekend, chess club 4 days a week, 60 kids at nationals, huge love of chess in the school and administration, and a super active parent fundraising committee. So if you, like Elizabeth says, if that appeals to you, then I will provide instructions for how to reach out to Elizabeth and IS 318 and to apply in the show description. Point number two, the Perpetual Chess Discord is now going to be open to all listeners. It's previously been a Patreon only thing. I'm very grateful to have something like 400 Patreon supporters that keep the podcast going, but we want the community to be more vibrant. We want there to be more discussion of chess, and we want it to be open to all chess players. So there will be a Patreon only channel, but other than that, let's try to get this community popping. And there's going to be a chess improvement channel, a professional chess channel, chess books and courses channel, general, whatever you may want. So I'll put a link to join. Please do come join the community. I'm in there all the time, and it would be great to have more people to chat with. And for those of you old like me, don't know what a Discord is, it's basically like an internet chat room. You can do it web-based, phone-based, or on kind of like a platform that you download on a PC, which is how I primarily use it. And last but not least, before we get to this great interview with Nick Matta, I wanted to thank, as always, our sponsors, Chessable.com. One of their new courses is one that came up when I interviewed Grandmaster Jesse Cry. He had recently reviewed Turbocharge Your Tactics to Accelerate and Win. Now, that one is fairly challenging from what Jesse said, 1800 and up level. But of course, Chessable has courses for players of all levels and plenty of free stuff too. So be sure to check that out. And if you sign up for Chessable Pro, please use the link in the description. So without further ado, I'd like to get you to the interview. Here is my Adult Improver Pod with FM Nick Matta. We are here with the 5-time Louisiana state champion. He is the highest rated player in his state. He's a trainer, an accomplished improver. Hopefully you all heard him on the Hikaru Comes and Plays Chess in Louisiana episode. He played Hikaru on the last day, had a really good game with him, and was very insightful in discussing that game. And our guest, in addition to his top-line accomplishments of the state championships and accolades he's won, he improved incredibly quickly in his 20s. He, beginning in 2014, he resumed chess, and he came back rated 1480, and some handful of years later was rated 2390, one of the more astonishing rises I've seen in reviewing it. So here to reveal all of his secrets, returning to the pod, is FM Nick Matta. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be back. Like I said before, been a big fan of the show, and I had a great time before. Felt like we had a lot we could talk about then, so glad we can have some more time to talk about whatever that might be.
Yeah, exactly. We only scratched the surface back then, but I mean, I can't believe, just looking at your graph, it's quite rare. And I always want to stress for listeners, by the way, that Nick's obviously a sharp guy, and I'm sure he'll have some insights on improvement, but do want to highlight this is an extreme outlier case. So you know, this is the 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, whatever case, this game that he had. So don't count on it for yourself, but hopefully we can extract a few lessons. And let's start, Nick, with your comeback. So in looking at your USCF graph, it looked like you played some as a kid. I know you've talked about one of your coaches in previous interviews as a Scholastic player, but then you took some time away, and at age 20, you came back. What brought you back?
A lot of factors. I mean, I think it was almost random that I came back, and I think it needed to be, because I think my departure from chess was a little unfortunate and circumstantial, largely influenced by Hurricane Katrina happening, and that coach you referenced, who was Alfred Carlin, is a life master, peak rating over 2,400 USCF, was a huge influence in my chess as a child. You know, I went from, I think, a 700 rated player to about the 1,400 level, that I returned at more or less, with Alfred's coaching. I got to that point in 2005, right before Katrina. Then Katrina happened, and I didn't get to play chess in tournament for about a year or so. There wasn't any tournaments happening in New Orleans. Obviously, a lot of other things were happening, that were taking priority. And Alfred unfortunately had to move as well. He moved to, I think, initially Houston and then Dallas. So I tried playing again for a few years after that, but I never quite got the same spark and passion for the game. I also had become the strongest player in my age group, when I was competing as a kid, and it felt like I had done accomplished what chess had to offer. You know, I didn't really see a bigger picture to chess at the time. Just thought of it as a hobby, something to do after school, something on the weekends. We didn't really take chess as seriously as we do now in terms of the opportunities it represents. So when I was in college, I hadn't played in quite some years, and I was just at a pretty challenging point in my life. I was a freshman in college. I was in winter break after my first semester. And, you know, it was just trying to find my way still. You know, I think I wasn't sure what I was going to major in or really focus on. You know, I had a major, but it wasn't clear if I would really pursue it very seriously or into a career. And yeah, at some point I just felt like I needed something to do. I was almost like looking for another video game to play when I just randomly one day decided, hey, what if I gave chess a try, just playing online? And there was something incredibly freeing about playing anonymously on chess.com, separate from the expectations of being like the top player in a division, or with tournaments in mind or rating in mind or anything like that. And I just immediately fell back in love with the game. Like it was like this lost art form that I had rediscovered, is how I've put it in the past. So I got back into playing pretty immediately. I think like around that like December or January of 2014. And yeah, it took off from there. I mean, I think I started playing tournaments again pretty quickly afterwards. And yeah, I think the rest is history, as they say. But it was pretty much on a whim that I got back into chess.
And then you had, again, this amazing progress. It looked like pretty quickly you started to improve a lot. So aside from playing quite frequently, which you were at the time, was there anything else you were doing?
Oh, yeah. I think it should be said that when I was a kid, I worked with my coach once a week and I played a lot of tournaments, but I never really studied in the way that I was encouraged to, or it was suggested to me that I should. I would often just enjoy playing, and I never read any books, never did any puzzle books or anything like that. I would just show up to tournaments and play a lot against my coach, watch the model games he would show me and things like that. But I never read any books. So when I got back into chess, at that point, my major was English. And I was even considering a minor in philosophy as well. I really enjoyed reading abstract works in general. I was reading like a lot of Kafka at the time, authors like that. And so I was really, after falling in love with playing again, I was very enticed to see what impact would studying have on my chess, like studying so many books. I would go to Barnes and Noble, and maybe this isn't legal or recommended, I'm not sure, but I would hang out there for maybe 6 to 8 hours and kind of get lost in chess for a bit. Like look at one book for an hour, look at another book for another hour, look at another book for an hour. I remember like Pawn Structure Chess by Andy Soltis was interesting to me. Jeremy Silman's books were amazing. Reassess Your Chess especially. Pawn Power and Chess by Hans Kamash was very interesting. Of course, My System. I basically became obsessed with chess. I mean, I was just like eating, sleeping, breathing chess, you know, all the time. I remember, I think it was about Bobby Fischer. They said like, oh yeah, he would dream about chess. And I don't know if I ever got to that point exactly, but I remember like before falling asleep, I would like think of like quadrants of a board, you know, like just a fourth of a chessboard, and just think about like checkmating patterns just for fun. I would just think about like, oh, well, if this is here, then that's there. And I'd have Stockfish on my phone, and I would look at one position and be like, okay, it evaluates it like this. If I move this pawn 1 square over, how does that change the evaluation? I just had like a curiosity just about how chess worked and like the philosophy and the abstract of chess that I never had before as a kid. You know, like when you're younger, I mean, perhaps there were some kids that are like that, but you know, for me, it took a long time for that to develop in myself. So I read a lot of books. I think probably the one that was most profound was How to Reassess Your Chess by Jeremy Silman. That book was tremendously helpful for me getting to the 2000 level. I think I'm in the camp that loves My System by Nimzovich. I know there's a split in the crowd of this book of people that, you know, think it's rubbish and other people that think it's the best book ever. I tend to be in the latter category as someone that had some vague background in philosophy. And, you know, when I would go to the weekly chess club, like I would play at the same chess club I would play as a kid, and there'd be 20 or 30 players of all ages and ratings, you know, like as strong as maybe 2,000, 2,100 at the highest level in New Orleans. I didn't read that it was recommended, but apparently it was a good approach to play the game and then immediately seek out the advice of a higher rated player to review the game. I would sometimes play chess.com games that were like game in 30 minutes and then post it on the chess.com forum and be like, I was really proud of this game, but then I made this mistake. What happened? Like, does anyone have any feedback? I was just really obsessed with learning about chess. Like I had loved playing so much that I was curious to see the impact that studying it would have. And I should say this was very new for me, not only in chess, but I think in general, because in high school and the start of college, I was the archetypal like smart kid that doesn't try, the like talented one that sleeps in class or like will read at home but not actually do the homework and like not get your grades and get told by everyone like, oh, if you did the work you'd be a straight A student and things like this. And I never saw myself having a standard conventional job. Just didn't interest me so much for whatever reason. And for me, chess was an opportunity to just fully immerse myself in the studying of a subject. And I was just very eager and I think awakened by that. You know, I think it was changing my relationship with feedback as a whole. I was just so eager to get any type of feedback, whether it was, well, what if I change the pawn, right? In the Stockfish, you know, position A to position B, or reviewing the game, or if I read this and then try it in the game, does it work? Just testing things out constantly. I think that was very much contributing to the fast rise.
Hearing you talk about it makes sense. So we're recording this on Thursday, November 20th. And I'm getting ready to interview John Bartholomew tomorrow. I actually think it's going to come out before this interview. Cool. And I was reviewing, he recently, earlier this year, went on Chess Journey, the Chess Journeys podcast. And he was telling the host, Kevin, shout out to Kevin, he was saying that he thinks the reason that one of the reasons that kids improve so much more quickly than adults, that gets underemphasized, and I'm going to ask him about this again tomorrow, so listeners again may have heard this, is the fact that they're able to totally immerse themselves in chess. You know, so people talk about neuroplasticity and this and that may play a role, but John was just pointing out that kids can just think about only chess in a way that it's very challenging for adults to do. And at the age of 20, when you fell knee deep in it. You are, first of all, your brain is still developing, but also you're at that age where you can devote, and it sounds like did devote just colossal amounts of time.
Yeah, I think I did in the same way you might hear someone at the same age devotes like 100 hours to like a video game,
Yeah.
obsessively and just around the clock. And chess just effectively just became that source of fun, but also imagination and intellectual stimulation. And I started to pretty quickly attach it to self-improvement as well. Like I would start doing long distance runs. You just go to the university gym and just hit the treadmill and maybe be watching a chess YouTube video or listening to it while I was running. And then I would also see some benefits to my chess game. I felt that chess had a reward system in its improvement that felt tremendously more fair and reflective of one's effort than I had seen maybe in other subjects in life at that point in time. I felt like if I did honest work, and I always think being really honest with myself about that self-feedback or the feedback I would receive from other people and just being really open to it was really critical to my success. And I think it changed my relationship with feedback, because I think prior to that, the reason why I struggled in school is because whatever they had to say, I didn't really want to hear it for whatever reason. I was like, oh yeah, you're just paid to do that. Like you have an agenda or something. But chess is just chess. There's a logic and a predictability to it that just I knew what to expect with it. And I think, yeah, it felt so, yeah, like I said, awakening to immerse myself in it. I think, like I said, I very quickly fell back in love with the game and studying it. I think the fact that I fell in love with studying it for the first time helped a lot.
Yeah, you made me think of the Emmanuel Lasker quote. So I was just quietly looking up, on the chessboard, lies and hypocrisy do not survive long. The creative combination lays bare the presumption of a lie. The merciless fact culminating in a checkmate contradicts the hypocrite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about chess is it represents, or at least gives some opportunity to engage with some objective quality, objective truth. Because I think seeing examples of Kasparov, who was one of my first chess idols when I got back into it, just be in this relentless pursuit of truth with like opening preparation, trying to discover the absolute best move. And there was an interview series that he did with, I think, Grandmaster James Plaskett. Plaskett. Yeah, I think that's correct. It's titled My Story. It's like a 5-part series. It's available on YouTube. And just hearing his passion for that search for truth and like that absolute best move, I think it really spoke to me, to try to have a similar approach in my own chess, that there is a debate to be had even after the game. Like the result of the game is almost less important than that search for ultimate truth through chess. And usually if people quickly ask me, like, we just have a brief moment to chat about how did you improve or what can I do to improve in a similar way, my answer is often just be brutally honest with yourself about what is happening in your chess. And for me, it's been very rewarding. I think it's inspired a lot of confidence and changed a lot of who I am for the better, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I'll put up a graphic of Nick's tournament history. But I mean, 2014, when you first came back, is crazy. I mean, you went from 1480 to, my page cuts off, but to at least 1972 in like 5 months, something like that. So this is the immersion period, I gather.
Yeah. I mean, I was a freshman in college, still trying to find my way. And, I got good enough grades to keep getting by, to maintain the little scholarship I had, but it wasn't like all in on the books, frankly, because like I said, I wasn't anticipating I would have some conventional jobs. So chess was really my obsession. I mean, I would bring I remember I'd have my system in my philosophy class reading underneath my philosophy textbook, so my teacher wouldn't call me out on it. And I would read the philosophy books actually at home just because it was interesting to me. But if I was there, I'm like, okay, I've already read this. Let me read my system. I think at that point, I also got to play pretty frequently. There was a Tuesday club that met every week, game in 90. Thursday, there were quads, game in 25. So we'd get 3 rated games every Thursday. Friday, there was game in 15. I don't think it was rated at all, but there was actually a 2300 level player. I think he was attending Tulane grad school at the time. So he was in New Orleans at that point. I'd ask anyone that was very strong advice. Like, I'd try to get a practice game with them. I would show them any game I might have available. And I was just obsessed with getting the feedback. I was just really curious to see where I was at. I think partly because I felt I had this potential that I had been sleeping on, and I wanted to see what would happen if I realized it. And then also I just enjoyed it. It was just fun. You know, I think that's so many times, like, I have to go back to that fact that I just really enjoy it for what it is. Of course, I did a lot of puzzles, a lot of calculation training. The video library on chess.com at this point, I also thought was tremendously strong. And I think it's something a lot of people should know more about. Like, around maybe 2012 to like 2015, there's so many Grandmaster lectures available on chess.com's video library. The ones by Melih, Khachiyan, especially, I think the series Evaluation and Planning, I thought was tremendously helpful. Like, just kind of having this system of evaluating any position. And Aronian was very quickly one of my favorite players just because of his style and the artistic quality to his chess as well. And then Khachiyan had coached him when he was a junior, helped him become an IM. So to watch his video series, I thought was really cool. In fact, one of my first appearances in any chess video was on Melih and me. I was, I think, 1500, maybe 1600 at the time. I got to play against a 2000 rated player who cooked me pretty nicely in some Sicilian with black going c6. It was one of those like reverse Alapin positions. Again, just seeking out feedback, just seeking out the response of a stronger player, not even relying on the engine so much for it. You know, like, I don't know if maybe we were as engine obsessed as a chess community and 2014, 2015, like, we certainly used it, but I think people felt more confident in saying, oh yeah, the engine's wrong though. You know,
Yeah, for
what
sure.
does the engine know? Now we just accept the engine as being the source of the ultimate truth. And I understand why. I mean, I'm certainly inclined to agree. You know, it's so strong at this point, but I still hold certain qualities from growing up, at least close enough to a time where we didn't rely on it as much. And that what is the best move in regards to a human game and the best decision is not always in alignment with what the engine suggests is the best move. So yeah, I played a lot. The videos were very helpful. The puzzles on chess.com were very helpful. Another tip that I've given students is, like, if you're in a weekly club, every Tuesday I knew I'd play a game in 90. I was able to guess the pairing, at least, of what color I would have pretty successfully, you know, because you would alternate each week. Sometimes it even guessed the opponent, but I would pretty quickly start preparing openings, even when I was like 15 or 1600. Like, if I knew that this person liked to play a certain system, like, for example, there were times I knew my opponent loved to play the Grand Prix attack. So while I wasn't like using ChessBase or anything, I'd look up a YouTube video of, like, well, what's the right plan against the Grand Prix attack? Or I'd review some video series I'd already been studying to learn the dragon, the Sicilian dragon, that is, so that it would be really fresh in my mind. This content I'm already generally trying to learn. Maybe an hour before I go drive to the club, I'll go watch this video or a couple of videos just to use it as motivation to learn it better. And then maybe I'll be able to use it in the game. These ideas will be a little bit more fresh, which probably did play a role in me eventually being pretty opening heavy, or, you know, doing opening work for other players too.
Oh. And at that time, were you playing like a fairly narrow repertoire, or were you trying to surprise people even then?
I'm glad you asked, because one of my philosophies is I think it's important for a growing player to be willing to abandon their openings, at least temporarily, because the way I thought about it, especially with the trajectory I was on, I had learned one opening in January as a 1500 level player. And then by March or April, I might be 17 or 1800. And I might form habits or evaluations or have certain beliefs of the opening based on my view as a 14 or 1500 level player that are no longer consistent with my understanding of chess as a 17 or 1800 level player. So I would try to learn new openings so that whatever I thought or whatever I grew comfortable with, and whatever habits I developed around that opening were in alignment with how I saw chess now as a stronger player. So I switched between E4 and D4 and C4 and Knight F3. I did have a soft spot for the Sicilian Dragon, because as a kid, my coach Alfred Carlin taught me the English. I think one reason why I got to 1400 pretty quickly was because there were many rooks on A8 blundered to the being kettled bishop on G2. Just like stormed the A pawn, A4, A5, A6. Oh, they took the pawn. Wee, bishop. But even then, I mean, I experimented with the French, I experimented with the Caro. I was always trying to adapt. The Sicilian Dragon, which is too much fun to fully give up ever, but D4, I changed openings a lot. King's Indian defense, I played for a while. Slav, Queen's Gambit Decline, Nimzo. And I was not just playing these in blitz games. I mean, I was playing these on like the Tuesday games, the game in 90, the game in 25, rated games. I was switching up my openings maybe once a month, maybe every 30 to 45 days. Because I felt like it's almost like a martial artist should be trying to train certain moves and positions and techniques. If I want to get to a certain command of chess, I should be at least at a certain level with each opening. But the thing or the thought that most influenced my decision was, well, I had this opening and I formed habits around it at this rating, and now I'm like 300 points higher rated. I don't even see chess in the same way. I understand things completely differently. So I should probably play an opening. Now I'll form habits around that, but with a much stronger perspective and one that's more in alignment with what that ultimate truth should be in chess. Like, what is the best move and what is the best approach?
And Nick, as you start to get higher rated, like your ascent started out meteoric, and then it was still swift, but it slows down obviously when you go from 1400 to 1900, then 1900 eventually to close to 2400 over many years. Did you feel like the things you had to do changed a lot as you progressed?
Yeah, I think it's always changing. And I think that's part of that being brutally honest with yourself, with your feedback to yourself. Another tenet of mine has been to really detach yourself from past successes and what helps you in the past. I think maybe that's consistent with the opening philosophy too, because I think people can only get attached emotionally to, well, this is my opening, and this is the opening I love to play. And I have that too, but I was always inspired by Kasparov talking about how he kept staying on top because he would analyze as if he lost, because he knew his competitors were analyzing from that position, that if he didn't analyze his wins as critically as he would analyze his losses, someone would eventually catch up to him. I think he talked about this in that My Story video series with the Grandmaster. So I think over time, physical endurance became increasingly important. So I went in even further with the long distance runs and other training like yoga. Meditation became tremendously important for me too, which I had not done until maybe 2019 as a master, trying to get to not even FM, but USCF 2300. Because I think you have to be honest with what it is you need at that moment in time, and not just what worked for you in the past. Calculation and the more finite side of chess, I had to work really hard to improve at, to take the next jump. Because as I'm saying, like, I love Nimzovich. Pawn Power in Chess is absurdly abstract book where he's like creating these words.
Not my favorite.
No, it's a torturous book. I was a sick puppy to think, oh yeah, great book. I love Pawn Power in Chess, because, like I said, I was reading like philosophy, like Foucault, for fun before that. So I was like, oh, this is that same thing where I read a sentence, I have no idea what it just said, but I'll try to translate it to my normal English and take meaning from that somehow. But eventually my chess was too abstract. One of my coaches was Gregor Kardanoff.
Oh, nice.
And also John, I should mention, John Bartholomew coached me.
Oh, funny. Both friends of the pod.
Yeah, they're amazing guys. And helped me in various ways. But I think Gregory in particular really emphasized like, oh, you're too abstract. Like, I'll ask you for a move and you'll give me like a novel. You know, he said I wrote the longest annotations of anyone he had coached in quite some time. I'd write paragraphs for like single move because I enjoyed writing always. I always enjoyed thinking in the abstract. So eventually, especially once I got to like 2200, I had become increasingly concrete and calculate. I had to drop this notion of ultimate truth, I think always being the right approach in a practical game. Because Aagaard, for example, in Thinking Inside the Box references chess as like a decision-making game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's generally correct. Like, I agree with that. There is an objective best move, but you have to play the game. You have to play the resulting position too, and you can't spend like 40 minutes analyzing like one move. I had a lot of problems with time trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say a timed decision-making game.
Yeah, Aagaard actually reviewed all of my games from one of my disappointing tournaments when I was playing as an National Master in an IM Norm event where I scored 2 out of 9 in Charlotte after earning free entry into the tournament. I had won the Charlotte Open earlier that year, scoring 5 out of 6 with no losses against, I think, 4 FMs and 2 IMs or something like that. And like one of the like FMs was like very young Liam Putnam, who has cooked me every time since then. But like, you know, very strong field. I did great. And then like just a few months later, I'm scoring 2 out of 9. And I had +1 or greater in 8 out of the 9 games, or -1 if I had black.
Right.
But I did so poorly because I would allow myself to get in time trouble, that like this evaluation didn't matter so much. Like, yes, I won the opening battle and the early middle game battle. I won the abstract. But then when it came time to actually convert on the position, I would misplay it so badly that not only would I not draw the game, I'd even lose it. So I read Thinking Inside the Box. And then once I did that, because that was recommended to me by Aagaard, and he reviewed my games and gave different feedback, which was a difficult pill to swallow for sure. To just
so what did he say? What stuck out?
Oh man, I think the direct way in which he got to the truth of the feedback was pretty eye-opening. You know, like I think Jakob doesn't really mince words, which
That's
is
for sure.
Yeah, and as a player, you know, and everything I've talked about, I really appreciate it. Emotionally though, you know, a disappointing tournament like that can be really defeating. You know, there's been a lot of various setbacks in this path of improvement. You know, it hasn't been a straight linear path forward. I do remember him saying, you have to ask yourself, what type of player do you want to be? And he said, this was the example of a player that had a complete mental collapse.
Oh, geez.
I was like, oh, man, I thought I was clutch. What happened? And then, you know, it's because time trouble makes a fool of us all, ultimately. You know, I think I had never had anyone be critical of, like, taking 25 minutes to move. Probably Gregory had, but, you know, I maybe hadn't focused on time trouble quite to the same degree as I had in that tournament, because whatever bad habits or mistakes that you're making as a result of those bad habits, eventually chess will reveal them to you. You might be able to get by with great opening preparation like I was for a while, or prior to this, really long time controls that Continental loves to have
Right.
that no longer do. You know, like one of my best tournaments I ever had was with game in 2 hours for the first 40 moves, an additional 30 minutes from there. I really miss those days. Those were good days.
Right.
Now 90 plus 30 is generally like about as slow as it gets, because they have the second time control, but typically it's with like the 10-second delay, which I'd rather the 90 plus 30, frankly, because there's so many clocks that you can't see the 10-second delay happening.
Yeah.
Anyways, it almost feels like, or 30-second delay, I should say. But even then, you know, not being able to see the delay is a bit of a problem, and not getting the time back. So I think it was just time that like this was the thing that was really holding me back more than anything from my chess, that being the time trouble. And I really had to reflect on it and train it. and starting to see some of the earlier abstract decisions, while I thought they were tremendously interesting, in a position where maybe 5 to 7 moves are like of near equivalent value according to the engine and by objective measures, and likely are not contributing to the outcome of the game. While I love the debate of it,
Right.
I had to just accept this as Aagaard would call, a simple decision. You know,
Yeah.
it's 4 types of decisions. And so not only did I have to let go of that intrigue and debating that, like I said, I've done opening work for other people. I've enjoyed being a second. I enjoy this type of work a lot. It was hindering my own game, and I had to trust my confidence, or have confidence in my ability to make highly educated guesses in such situations. I think at some point in the book, you might say that these types of decisions are informed by like thousands of hours of training and studying and experience, and you are making a highly educated guess. No one really knows. We can be fools that convinces ourselves that we know this ultimate truth in chess, but we don't really know. So you have to kind of like let go and save that time. So I would play rapid games online, maybe 15, maybe 25 minutes. And what I would do is after the game, I would annotate whether or not the move I made was in a simple position or like simple decision, critical, automatic, or I think strategic is the other one. And I was trying to improve my intuitive understanding of what the types of decisions are and how much time was appropriate. And I realized, oh, wait, I'm burning all my time on the quote unquote simple decisions because I love this side of chess so much. So that was a big change for me. And then to combat nerves in that time too, because it's one thing to play blitz with not very much time. It's another thing to spend hours in a game and like have this attachment to what's been happening. You know, sometimes I'll play a game and think, wow, this would be a great game to show my students. Like, beautiful positional game and has this idea, that idea, such a genius, go me. And then time trouble comes, you're like, oh shoot. Back to reality. It's very challenging on your nervous system. Like my nerves in time trouble, I didn't think were too bad, but they just weren't at the same level that the FM and IM level players I was playing, especially the IM plus. I was not keeping up with them in that phase of the game like I was earlier in the game. So, per the advice of a friend that was training for medical school at the time, they said you should try combining cold plunging with calculation training. So I would cold plunge at my house, get freezing cold. And the reason is because it would activate my nervous system in a way, and the natural adrenaline that can come from being in cold exposure that did feel similar to time trouble, because there was that like natural, like tension. And as soon as I was done, I would then go to my laptop and go to Chess Tempo, which is where I would do a lot of my calculation training in recent years. That's a kind enough tip. And see how I could calculate and if I could maintain my level in those conditions too. And that was very helpful for time trouble. I felt like, oh, if I can regulate during that, then I can regulate myself during whatever time trouble there might be. So very different from before.
That's hardcore. When I listen on occasion to the Tim Ferriss podcast, he's always got these tech bros recommending cold plunges. And I'm just like, no way, I can't do it. Like life is hard. I don't need to make it harder for myself, freezing my ass off in order to awaken the senses or whatever. And in the almost 10 years I've been doing this podcast, somehow, obviously I'm an advocate of meditation. I've meditated regularly at times. Like I'm, not anti mindfulness and self-actualization, but I've always struggled with the cold plunges.
Yeah, I think you eventually want a rating or title enough that you're willing to get yourself doing anything. I've changed my diet for chess. I did yoga for a while in a similar time frame. And it wasn't even necessarily about the rating or title in of itself. I think that's more of a vehicle for other motivations, which was mostly, I think, to fulfill whatever potential I thought I had, which I thought was a certain level at some point. There was always this video of Karpov going into this, like, I don't know, it's like frozen water. I don't know where it is, but like he immerses himself in like the cold water, and someone presents Karpov this like wooden board as he's like just in his swim trunks, and it's like older Karpov too, so it's just like a really ridiculous image.
And as I think about it, like I lived in Russia for a bit, for a semester in college, and the banyas are big there, you know, basically big saunas, but also people run outside into the freezing Russian winter. So maybe that ties into the cold plunges.
Yeah, no, like I had never understood like what type of masochism informs that decision to do that. And then it was just suggested to me as like a way to maybe train your nerves around chess. Cause, you know, I could play blitz, but it's not going to be the same thing as time trouble. You know, I couldn't simulate that challenge, is like needing to actually calculate while your nervous system is just everywhere, you know? And I think what would happen before I trained this is I would look at the position and think that I'm calculating, but I'm really just not evolving my move or my analysis past my intuition. And my intuition is probably clouded anyways because of the mental state I was in.
Right.
This was also combined with like a greater understanding of what calculation is, thanks to Aagaard. Aagaard talks about calculation as the search for moves we don't naturally see. And I remember he has, I think, an interview, I forget who it's with, but he talks about younger Anand being considered this great calculation genius because of how quickly he moves. And he sees these combinations, but I think he says in the interview that Anand really just got a tremendous intuition and pattern recognition. And that the fact that he sees many moves ahead is not reflective of calculation. It's more a reflection of that intuition and pattern recognition. And what I started to do was like to look at literally every single move in a position as it was in front of me, and then try to replicate that in future positions too. And I was practicing that just naturally, but then I would try to practice it while finishing a cold plunge too, and keeping that control of a position. It's very good for avoiding blunders and like making sure if there is a move that your intuition would register as important, either to play or to avoid, you're going to give yourself the chance to see it. Whereas otherwise, previously, I'd probably get more tunnel visioned. So I think in a tangible way, besides, I guess, having nerves of steel or ice water in my veins at that point, that was probably what shifted the most. And I think as I got stronger and stronger, the need to focus on both the physical, emotional, and even like more spiritual side of chess, or myself rather, became increasingly important for my chess improvement. Whereas previously I just needed to immerse myself in the subject of chess and just educate myself on it. But I kind of had to understand myself in chess more as I got stronger.
And do you see that in your students now? Do you have students who have kind of hit that point too?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, I try to encourage it even earlier on when it's applicable. I think Kaidanov's been a big influence in that. I think he's great with the psychology of chess and just understanding one's personality through their chess. And perhaps that's why, among many great coaches like John, Eltosh Safarli I've worked with as well. I've worked with Melih for a little while too. I'd be remiss to not mention other names, but to just keep the list short, you know, I think I'll stop there. But I think I've worked with Gregory the most because he's offered so much insight into my personality tendencies through chess. And I think he has the capability of probably doing that with anyone at any level. So I think when it's been applicable, I have tried to provide those insights and lessons, or at least ask the right questions to my students to come to similar realizations, whether they're approaching NM, or maybe they're like 1400. I think once someone hits a plateau, whatever that is, there's a little soul searching that might need to be required a bit, you know, if nothing else, to muster the right motivation and inspiration to get past the plateau. But oftentimes your mistakes in chess are connected to some of these personality qualities too.
Yeah, I quoted Peter Giannatos from my adult improver interview with him, where he said, "Whenever you're stuck, change something." I think it's good advice for sure. So, what kind of changes do you often find yourself recommending students make?
I think I'm a big proponent of meditation. That's probably one of the biggest.
How do people resist when you suggest that?
I think everyone agrees initially, but whether they follow through and actually do it is a whole another thing. I think everyone understands. Yeah, meditation. That sounds great. I should do that.
Yeah, and one of the many things I should do.
Yeah, be with your own thoughts.
Literally eat healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I'm supposed to start another meditation streak. I've told myself, and I'm still on day 0, so having trouble getting back into it. It's amazing how hard a 10-minute or 15-minute commitment it can be, just to actually slow down, stop all the stimulation around yourself, and just be with your thoughts, or erase your thoughts, be with your breath rather.
Yeah. And the power of a streak, the power of a routine is, because I go back and forth too. And, I mean, I was most regular a long time ago, but I've had 2-month streaks. And then once you miss one day, it's just all over. Returning quickly to the topic of time management, because I felt like you were uniquely insightful. Obviously, it's come up a ton over the years, and I've mentioned many times I've struggled with some of the same issues that you mentioned, and I've become more self-aware about them, but I still struggle to I can do everything but force myself to move when I'm sitting there at that exact moment, thinking, I can now, it used to not be a conscious realization that this is a relatively meaningless decision in terms of the win expectancy of my game. Now I'm aware of it and still have trouble moving. Does that ever happen to you, or did you work through that?
I think if anything, I've probably somewhat gone in the other direction, moving too quickly sometimes. Like my game against Hikaru is kind of a great example, where I did play G5, this let's say committal move, but correct move within maybe a minute or so. But then later, when the position had become more critical than I was actually aware of at the time, I was still approaching it as if it were like a simple decision. Perhaps the strength of Hikaru made that the consequence of that more abundantly clear, but I do think sometimes I do play a little bit more quickly than I should. I think in general, it's important to be fully invested in the results of the game, but still have the ability to accept where you're at in your chess. I think advice that Gregory has given me is, at some point you have to accept that during the game, this is just where you're at in your chess education. Like if you
said that in our Hikaru interview too, yeah.
Yeah, more times not necessarily going to produce a better move. That was something that I really struggled with accepting. But no, if I have more effort, chess would reward it. But it's maybe it's misplaced effort, and it's hard to know when that is. You can ultimately be wrong, but that's why it's a decision-making game. You have to evaluate that and trust your evaluations. I think I'm always willing and eager to put in more work into chess. Sometimes life circumstance doesn't afford me as much time as it would in other moments. Like, for example, I wish I had the same amount of time now as I did as a 20-year-old in college with just the world in front of me, to study chess. But at some point or another, you end up having the time to work on the game, and you end up having these different phases of your career that, whether it's as a professional or it's just an adult improver, I think so long as you're willing to keep working at it and accept whatever result might come, it makes it a little bit easier to take some risks or to live with the consequences of your decision. But if you're attached to past results, I think maybe this is an example why I think it's important to detach yourself from past success, and almost like playing to protect this narrative that you can build in your mind because you won this tournament and you got to this rating, and now because of this, you deserve continued success. It makes it easier to just accept, well, maybe like this won't be the tournament for me. Maybe I will need to go back to the drawing board a bit. And it's not to be thinking about this so actively in the game, but to kind of be at terms with that going into it, so that when you do play, you're not playing out of like fear of the results. You just play with that acceptance of where you're at in your chess education in a very genuine way. And then understanding that if you keep working at it, there should be some progress. The only issue is just sometimes the rest of the chess world is progressing too. I think everyone should
Right.
now that, yeah, you have to compete with everyone else in this front. But yeah, I think if anything, I probably move a little too fast now, but there's always the never-ending evolution of your game, which I think is one of the great things chess affords us, is that there's always some problem to be solved.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, maybe it's just my own bias based on my own experience, but I feel like it's better to move too fast than to move too slow. I think it's easier to fix for people, and it's like you're not usually moving like instantly, it's whereas time trouble can just destroy your results.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the direction that the chess world is heading in. I think that's part of it too, is that so much of chess these days, even weekend tournaments, the time controls are getting faster. And of course, we're being increasingly incentivized to play online. The opportunities that are there are great. And time is as much of a part of the game as anything, because I think the capacity for a chess player to play, let's say, near perfect chess is more and more commonplace than it used to be. I think there are examples, not necessarily thinking of myself, but of like 2300 level players playing perfect chess, maybe with the right preparation, familiarity with the position, good breakfast, whatever might be contributing to their play that day. I think because the engine and the training opportunities are so universal now, and there isn't this gatekeeping of truth like maybe there was 30 years ago, where you needed to have a strong GM in your area to possibly have a chance, or to be of a certain social or economic class to have that type of insight. Now everyone could just go to chess.com or Lichess, use the engine, use the training platform from Chessable, whatever it might be, and play a very, very high quality game. So I think the sporting qualities of chess, starting with time management, nerves, and just general form, whether you've been training recently or not, become increasingly important. So it almost does feel like a competition to be able to play just as well, but even faster.
Yeah.
There's actually like not only, a matter of avoiding the weakness of time trouble, but there's incentive to becoming strong and putting other people in time trouble by virtue of you playing faster and faster if you can maintain the same quality. So I think because that's been one of my ambitions in trying to get to IM and being able to maintain a similar level as when I was playing 2 hours for 40 moves, 30-minute sudden death, and keep the same level as if I'm playing 60 plus 30 or 90 plus 30, whatever the time control might be. It has influenced my chess in that way too.
And when we chatted after your game against Hikaru, you sounded like you were kind of at a crossroads about pursuing the IM title. As you mentioned, it's been, I haven't looked, something like 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that since our conversation. Have your thoughts evolved since then?
Not tremendously. I think right now, having been back in New Orleans still for only about 7 months or so, maybe 8 now, I'm really in the thick of it as a coach and really enjoying it. When I was living in New York, I consider myself a player first and coach by profession, but I was really taking advantage of the opportunities afforded to me by living in New York City, just tournaments all the time at the Marshall or the Norm events or whatever it might have been. I trained right away, that I was studying a ton and playing a ton. And now that I'm back in New Orleans, I not only do coaching, but I do community organization. Like I organize scholastic events and do work with other non-tournament chess events as well. And I have more in-person private lessons that I'm giving now that I'm really enjoying. And I think a lot of chess professionals wear many different hats at various points in their career. And right now I'm wearing the coach and
Yeah.
social leader hat more than any other. I do play the local events, and I'm still playing on chess.com pretty actively. I am still doing some opening work for some people too. Recently, I've even gotten pretty strong idea or ambition to become a Chessable author.
Oh, cool.
Given that background and writing and the abstract and doing opening work for pretty strong players, it feels like a natural stage or natural evolution of my strengths as a chess personality to eventually pursue. But I think it's mostly because I'm a little bit more at peace with the idea that there is this ticking time bomb of age that like, oh, I have to get to this level by this age. And I don't really believe that's so critical now. I feel like whether I'm 31 or 33, because I'm 31 now, but whether I'm all in on the tournament circuit right now is less urgent than doing it under the right conditions where I can play serious tournaments every month and travel for them and dedicate my entire focus to it. I'm still keeping up with it enough, I think, to maintain my level. But in terms of pursuing the IM title, I think it would get in the way of the most immediately important goals as a coach that I have, returning to a lot of the schools that I was at before I left for New York. I'm really enjoying kind of either rebuilding or establishing new programs at these schools in terms of their tournament participation. I think you see people like Hikaru who not only maintain their level later, but also improve at a later age, but also after having so many hours invested in chess already, because his life circumstances around chess have improved. I've drawn inspiration from Josh Waitzkin too at various points. You know, I was a Searching for Bobby Fischer kid.
Mm-hmm.
Watched that movie literally a dozen times. You know, take a draw, we'll share a championship, all that. Even actually, I got to play in Josh Waitzkin's simultaneous that he gave in Memphis that he references in The Art of Learning.
Okay.
Yeah, the famous Tai Chi push hands simul that he gave, where he felt he was performing the martial art as opposed to playing chess. I was there, and anyways, I think in a different podcast, Josh references that is easier to find improvement in other domains than the one you're a master of, because maybe what you need to improve at for chess is really something interpersonal or something that is also used in some other domain besides the one you have countless hours in. And if you improve that quality in other things besides chess, you might see that improvement in chess more. I don't think he's speaking about chess so much, maybe basketball, because he's like he works with the Boston Celtics now, I think, as a consultant for them. But I think right now, you know, actually like meditation streak, and I've been on some other streaks recently that have been very good for me, improving those and improving as a coach. That I think it will all contribute to an eventual IM push. I do want to give it a shot, and I don't think I'm done at all as a player. I do have one norm. I've had some very good tournament results and single game results, and I think I've gotten to a certain level that is at the very least knocking at the door of IM. And given how late I did start studying chess, you know, into my 20s, it's like a 1400. I definitely feel like I have more in the tank, and I've always been interested in trying to actualize whatever potential is there in me. I think that's perhaps like the greatest motivating source than anything else. So I think right now I'm trying to accomplish other goals to gear up for that eventually. And it might be maybe a year from now. It's hard to say exactly, because when I say gearing up for that, I think there's just such a logistical requirement
Right.
For pursuing that title that would just come at the sacrifice of other things. And it's a sacrifice that I have made and just comes in time. You know, I think, again, detaching from past success, kind of rebirthing yourself as a new player with new patterns, new habits. Likely this is what will be required of me to get to that title, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's something that most of the people listening, there might be some challenges to play OTB, but you've got the issue where like you're the strongest player in Louisiana. So to get to a higher level, to chase norms, we're talking about a lot of travel and a lot of money. In addition to the chess itself, obviously, is an immense challenge. But you layer on top of that, as you said, the logistics, and it makes sense to rest, store your energy, store your capital, and then push.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I still do some training. Like I'll still bring out the board and I'll pull out Dvoretsky's Recognizing Your Opponent's Resources, which is a great book. And I do have to give a shout out to my favorite training book if anyone's looking for material. One, a lot of my recent books that I've enjoyed have come from Chessdojo's recommendation. I did really enjoy participating more at a distance in their program just because I'm kind of all over the place. I wasn't the best student in school, so I don't report it so much, but I do check their book list recommendations, and I'll listen to their podcast. I really enjoy what those guys have to say and recommend in general.
Too. Yeah.
Perfect Your Chess, I think, is like the greatest.
Every master says that.
Yeah.
No,
because it came at that time in chess where engines existed and they were helpful, but they were not the source of a lot of the solutions. A lot of the solutions were human found and understood by top trainer and top player as contributing to one's improvement. And I think there's something special about that mix, and just the positions that were chosen were just done with such care. And I think there's no greater book for opening your imagination to chess and like the geometrical patterns and giving you the pattern recognition and intuition that at least helped me get to FM. And maybe, if I continue to train with the book or teach from the book, even greater results. But I still do train a bit, like not every day like I was before. I think that was definitely a change that happened over time, was like just kind of every day, multiple hours, eventually when I was pursuing FM, and like really all in as a, let's say, semi-professional tournament player on the circuit, as I say. Now I still keep up with it a bit to play pretty well on chess.com, my anonymous account, where I still enjoy trying to get pretty high rating on 3-minute chess, just because that's where the best competition generally is. And then playing the local events, since at least I can play there. We did have an IM Stuart Rachel's.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. He's unretired. Yeah.
Yeah. He played at New Orleans tournament just a few weeks ago with me. I had the honor to play him in the final round. He got the better of me because he's a better endgame player. But, it's definitely not dormant. And I think it's important, even if you're taking a break, to try and stay a little in touch with it. Because I do think while getting older is not necessarily a challenge, being removed from the game altogether is. And I think maybe even in some of my other breaks I've had in time, the fact that I'm a coach and I'm always at least in touch with chess has been very helpful. And I think for other adult improvers, whether it's training or looking at chess for enjoyment, you have to kind of always, or you should always try and stay in touch with the game somehow, some way.
Yeah, for sure. That's good advice. You would like Stuart Rachel's book too, his memoir, The Best I Saw in Chess, it's called. Really fun reminisce of his rise up the ranks. So a couple more questions before we let you go, Nick. This has been super informative. One is, so you seem like you came up kind of at the tail end of what might be called the analog age. Certainly you had an analog sort of cerebral approach, devouring books and seeking advice from people rather than engines. But now you're coaching the next generation. Like, what sort of advice do you give? Do you tell them read this book, or do you tell them like do what works?
I think I have to adapt what I prescribe to the personality that I'm teaching. I would say in my ideal world, we use a blend of both. Like I remember when I started working with Gregory, I believe he told me, if you don't get chess based and you don't annotate, your games, it won't be worth your time and money to work with me. And I haven't said anything to that degree, usually because I'm working with much younger people that aren't paying for the lessons themselves. But
Right.
I strongly encourage my students to annotate, and I try to get them to do it even at a young age and lower rating. Like I have students that are maybe like 9 years old, rated 1000, starting to journal or annotate, and like commenting on it and having deeper self-awareness. Definitely, I try to encourage some use of books whenever there's buy-in, and if there's not buy-in from a student, I try to motivate them to. But at the same time, I recognize that times are changing and not everyone learns best that way. I think whether it's a book or through some online program, I think it is very beneficial to follow some curriculum or program that's been designed by a strong player. I think it's helpful also to use a tactics trainer, and I've always used them, but I think that should be complemented by some source material, whether it's a book or a Chessable course. I've used Chessable a ton as well, and I really enjoy Chessable. But I do think there are certain subjects or ideas in chess that are better studied from a tactile perspective with a book, where spaced repetition maybe is not as important, or maybe you need to engage more with system 2 thinking compared to system 1 thinking. That Jesse Cry is like a very big proponent of, like,
Yeah, for sure.
maximizing the system 2.
Yeah.
I think there was times where I recommended to a student that they just only try to play over the board, specific to them. And that's not a recommendation I make to a lot of players, but because they were so strongly immersed in it and it would kind of wreck their habits, then I would not suggest it. And then another student, I recommended that he play 1 minute chess as his homework.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he needed to just like treat chess like a video game. He was just taking it so seriously and just so harsh on himself that he just needed to have fun with it and just like, just engage with it at a level that's not so serious, and you just let yourself kind of grow through the games. And I didn't say you have to play for like an hour straight or anything like that, but like, I know you enjoy it and you think that you're not supposed to do this. Go ahead, play it. Like, that's fine. I think I really try to adapt to the needs of the student, and what they require at that moment in time in their chess. As I said, I think the best is to have some training on a training platform like Chess Tempo. I really think Chess Tempo has the best problems for calculation training, because then you have some objective measurement of your progress versus past efforts in their rating system. And then I think it's really good to complement that with some source material, whether it's a book or a Chessable course that's of a book, or maybe an opening. I think the combination of these two is often like very effective, but I think whether they're using the online platforms or not, probably whether I recommend that is dependent on whether I think they're at an age or maturity enough to really use it in a way that's going to be productive and like educational. Sometimes people focus on completion at the expense of understanding. I think you can say you completed the course or you clicked through the moves of a book, but if you can't really communicate the ideas and translate them to your games, then it might be effort that would be better directed in another way, like reading a book, and maybe read less, but if you understand more of it, that'll actually help you more as a player.
Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. Lots of good advice there. So is there any conventional chess wisdom that you disagree with, that you find yourself ranting against?
I think one of them is trade while you're ahead.
Nate Solon recently wrote about this. So yeah, go.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps one that I find myself needing to correct or almost unteach in certain students the most, because it encourages an engagement with the result at the expense of disconnecting with the process of playing the right move for the position, especially for younger players that think, well, I'm better, so now I should trade. But what if your advantage is a space advantage? Then you shouldn't trade. Or
Right.
what if you're up a pawn and you're better, but it's not enough on its own to win? Then now you're ignoring all the other positional factors that are contributing to your advantage, and you're throwing them away. You're no longer trying to play in the same way that got you the advantage. And because now that you have it, you're just thinking, well, I should just trade. I should just trade. Of course, there's very relevant examples where simplification is helpful to a position, but there's usually other considerations too, besides the simple material score, which is how people typically interpret it. Like, well, I'm up a point, or I'm up 2 points, therefore I should trade. Well, what if what you traded was your best minor piece for their donkey knight? Like that's not going to make it any easier for you in all likelihood, unless we're talking about the last simplification to a winning pawn endgame or something more on the extreme. And I think I generally just encourage people to just focus on playing the best move and almost focus on increasing the advantage. If your ambition to outplay the opponent and make your position better and having that focus helped you to get the advantage in the first place, don't let that go. Because I remember that there was a game that's ingrained in my memory against WGM Sabina Foischer. She came to the New Orleans Open in December 2015. And I was maybe a little bit over 2,000 at the time. And, she was the rating she is. And I got a great position out of the opening. Bishop F4, Queen's Gambit declined. I guess I remember the game so well because it was like a chess trauma of sorts where I get this wonderful advantage. I think just to give it some objective measure that the audience can listen to, it's like maybe +1 to like +1.3 range, something like that. Strictly on active pieces, space advantage, and initiative. And I see the opportunity to play a sequence of forcing moves that lead to me getting an extra pawn in a rook and pawn endgame. Double rook and pawn endgame, so it's 2 rooks for each player. And I also see the move that would continue in the spirit of I played in the whole game, just accumulating better square control, micro advantages, just stacking up. Like I could put my rook on the 7th rank, I think, and it doesn't win any material, but it's a very active piece there, and it just improves the pressure and leverage I have on the position. Well, as a 2,000 rated player, I thought, wait, not only can I win a pawn against a player about 400 points higher rated than me, but I can force trades too. Double whammy. That's awesome. Like, I can't lose. I'm up a pawn in a double rook endgame. And I do the other rule, trade while you're ahead. So I do it, and of course Doctor says it's immediately 0-0-0. Of course, I don't know this in the game, but in the game, not only is it equal, but her rook is so much more active than me. The part of my mind that was considering all other elements of evaluation besides material and trading while you're ahead completely vanished once I had this opportunity, because I felt like I struck gold against this higher rated player. I had never been a player nearly that high rated, so I was very eager. And it's one of those positions where my rook is just so passive. And for me to save the game would have required that I accept I'm actually in danger and I need to sacrifice the pawn back, accept that it's equal, and just keep up from there. But given the mindset that I was in to even accept the circumstances in the first place, I was not able to make that shift, and I lost the game because her pieces just became too active and my extra pawn was under control and rather meaningless compared to the activity of her rooks. So I think that's probably the experience I had as a player that most directly informed that view, that while well-intentioned, I think that advice can actually backfire pretty significantly. I think there's times where maybe there's chess maxims that are maybe less helpful than others, but I don't often think of one as like actively dangerous to adhere to consistently, except maybe that one. I think just maybe I could reflect on others too, but like I think that's probably the one I try to correct or coach around the most. That there are circumstances where this is true, for sure. Like I said, if you can force simplification to a winning pawn endgame and you know it's winning, though those are always tricky too, to really know if that's correct or not.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem I see that players experience, especially younger players, but probably true of all ages, is that it disconnects you from actually playing the game and shifts your focus to result and using the position as a means to that end, that being the result. And instead of just playing one great move at a time and seeing where it takes you. And for that reason, yeah, I probably, I think that's the one. I'm like, oh, no, don't mention trading while you're ahead. Like, there's so much more to it than that. So,
yeah. Good.
Yeah, that's my stick.
All right. Yeah, good advice for sure. And it sounds like your cat could use some attention. My last question.
Yeah, my friend Mermaid has returned home, so she's just eager to have someone that's not on an interview.
Okay. My last question for you. So you've given the 1 hour version. When someone looks at your grading graph and says, how on earth did you do this? But what's the 1 minute answer? What would you say is it like unfair to even try to distill it down to a short answer?
I'm not even sure if the full hour did it. I guess I'll know when I listen back. But yeah, I think being completely honest with yourself, view feedback as a gift and not something we need to defend ourselves against. That insight's closer to truth. Be patient with yourself. Remember, growth is never linear. A lot of times, I think the players that have tremendous success are the ones that earn their stripes by just sticking with it. I had a lesson with a student before this. I had a disappointing result trying to qualify for one of the national tournament of champions. And, it can be devastating, whether it's that or even trying to cross 1,000 and you just come up short, or getting to 2,000, whatever your goals are in the moment. If you come up short and you put a lot into it, it can be really, really hard. I had many, many setbacks. 5 state championships. I came second place 5 years in a row before I ever won it. And many others too, like spending and investing in chess and not only not improving, but sometimes regressing. And usually improvement is just right on the other side of that increased commitment, just hang in there. I think, usually people stop at some point because they get discouraged, and it's likely that improvement that they're looking for is right around the corner if they just overcome that immediate test. So to have that feedback, whatever it is in those circumstances, as hard as a pill can be to swallow, it's a gift that I think chess gives us. Like the opportunity to play a game that has an objective quality to it and can reflect truth back at you and something about the way you engage with truth, I think makes it different from a lot of other things in life. I think the fairness of chess. So I think staying in touch with that and remembering why you're doing it in the first place, because it's something you're passionate about. Yeah, it's probably gone over a minute now, but I think this is like the best way I can try to sparks note it,
And do cold plunges.
Yeah, meditate,
Right.
do half marathons, and drink lots of water. These are all the keys to life to do simultaneously, of course.
Right. Excellent. All right. Well, Nick, extremely insightful. Really appreciate it. Let's do this again when you get the IM title.
Absolutely. I'll see you next year with them.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Nick. Take care.
My pleasure, Ben. Thank you.